Welcome, everyone. I am so happy to have you here. We're hoping that one of these days it'll actually turn into spring and stay that way. Until then, I'm thrilled that you made it out here on this somewhat cloudy day to talk about joy and purpose in your lives, because I really think that it's such an important subject. So I am LauraTKelso. I'm the creator and moderator of this series. In my day job, I have started a real estate brokerage that is focused on serving seniors at the very highest level, but really focusing on helping people with education and learning so that they can make the decisions for themselves. So today, this subject really is near and dear to my heart. And it's also one that is constantly evolving with this idea that people are living longer and things are changing drastically. So once upon a time, if you were a man, it was very likely that you had the career outside the home. You might have worked for the same company for a number of years and then retired with a pension. Does anyone remember those? Those really did exist once upon a time. If you were the wife of that said man, you probably stayed home. You likely tended to the children and tended to the house. Possibly you had very little to do with the major home maintenance tasks, and likely you may not have also been very involved in the finances. That tended to kind of go along with that male realm as well. So obviously that's a very stereotypical look back at what it was once upon a time. But nowadays, so many things have changed. Truly, gender roles have morphed completely. Women more and more are finding, careers outside the home for many years. I feel like many are equally involved in everything DIY around the house, and most certainly sharing in all the duties and the knowledge of financing and financial planning and things like that. I know in our household, my children would, when they were all still at home, call my husband asking what's for dinner, because they knew they would actually get an answer. And I was incredibly grateful that my husband, who also is back there helping with these events, Mark, loves to cook, because that was not my strong point, and everyone knew it. On the other hand, both of us had very, very full-time jobs, and so many of those other household duties would often simply go to whichever one of us had the time and the energy on any given day. I love my job, but it's very, very time-consuming, and I find that it's also a big part of who I am, and not only what brings me joy, but a big part of my purpose. Now that my children are older, we have one that is left at home part-time, and the others have gone. You may feel the same way. You may have either had a career in the past that you absolutely loved. You may still be working now. And the question today that we're really going to be touching upon is, as our roles in life change, if you once upon a time found majority of your worth and your purpose and your reason to get out of bed while you were raising littles into beautiful adults, or helping people through a promising career, and your life starts to change and your roles start to change and our bodies start to change, what is going to keep you now for the next 20, 30, 40 years? What is going to sustain your body, your mind, your social needs, your interaction? We're really going to focus on, not that you can't have joy if you aren't healthy or you're an introvert or any of that, But I do believe that it makes it easier when we can, one, keep our bodies healthy, keep our minds healthy, find things that we enjoy outside the home, both people and activities that bring us purpose and, give us a reason to head out the door even when it may not be a beautiful day. And finally, we're going to look at the big picture of this idea of leaving a legacy. Now, in this room, we have never shied away from the idea that all of us are mortal and our days on this earth are numbered. I believe that's an important conversation that we shouldn't shy away from. But today, we're going to be looking at hospice from the standpoint not really of the dying aspect of it, but of this idea that based on the fact that we are mortal and our days are numbered, how can we live each day to the fullest? How can we really plan our lives and live our lives in such a way that we can be absolutely, knowing that at the end of the life, when we have a celebration of life, that everyone around us can feel like and say, that person really lived life to the fullest. All right, is everybody ready to learn? Okay, I'm going to let each one of our speakers go ahead and introduce themselves, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Dr. Don VerHulst. I'm an MD, but I do natural alternatives.
My name is Virginia Scholten. I'm the Executive Director of the Young at Heart Senior Enrichment Center.
My name is Mark Bennink. I'm Spiritual Care Advisor, a chaplain with the Grand Rapids team of Hospice of Michigan.
Okay, so we're going to start with Dr. Don. So, Dr. Don, you have a really cool and interesting background. Can you start off by telling us a bit about your history and how you felt led to focus on teaching people to live their healthiest lives?
Yes, when I went to medical school, I had a passion for health and thought I was going to learn health care. And instead, I learned disease care. And nothing wrong with disease care. And I often tell people, if you have a heart attack or break your leg, don't come to me for natural alternatives. Get to the emergency room or, God forbid, the intensive care ward. We need those things, certainly. But I just had a passion for helping people getting and staying healthy naturally, basically, which involves detoxification and balancing the immune system. And so I started doing that on my own and really researching on my own. And I think, of course, my medical background helped me to do that. But I was quite surprised that natural alternatives can work as well, sometimes even better than the pharmaceuticals. And so I tell people in most cases there's a better way than poisoning yourself to health. And I'm not making a wholesale condemnation on pharmaceuticals, certainly. Don't quit taking your pharmaceuticals because you hear me speak. But pharmaceuticals are poisons with a desirable side effect, and often those side effects can be very dangerous. And I'd say probably the most important contrast between natural alternatives and pharmaceuticals is the fact that pharmaceuticals are really good at covering symptoms, but often they ignore the cause of the problem, whereas the natural alternatives that I try to focus on are dealing with the cause of the problem. And the really unfortunate circumstance is when the pharmaceutical not only ignores the cause of the problem, but makes the cause worse. And unfortunately, that's happening way too often. So that's my passion, to help people find natural alternatives when there are natural alternatives. And it's not always reasonable and prudent to try natural alternatives, but when it is, that's what I help people do.
Yeah, have you ever listened to the long list of side effects on every single commercial? May include death is not one you ever want to hear. Many of the subjects that are covered in this series really boil down to some very basic key elements to be successful. So, Dr. Don, you've written multiple books, including Do This and Live Healthy and 30 Quick Tips for Better Health. Can simple changes really make that much of a difference for most people?
Simple changes absolutely make a huge difference. I like to say that your health is simple, even though it may seem complicated, and your health is your choice. Even if you don't think you're making decisions, you are making decisions. By not doing the healthy things, it's a decision in the wrong direction. So I felt like my really value to people was taking all my background and trying to take what seems like a complicated subject and simplify it into some simple things that people can do that will have a profound effect on their health.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Sometimes we say things are simple, they're not necessarily easy. If you were to pick one healthy action step that you feel would give those in the audience the biggest gain from their efforts, what would that be?
It would be learn the song that I wrote about what my books are based on, the 10 keys that cure. And although these are not the only important things for your health, they are foundational issues for your health. And if you ignore any one of them, it will have a negative effect on your health. And these are all obviously simple things, but I wrote a song about it so that you will remember these things, and that's what music does. Part of it is repetition to help you learn to remember those things. So I'll share that song with you if you'd like. If you'd like to sing, you didn't know you were coming to a sing-along today, did you? But here are the 10 keys that cure, which are all my books are based on. Go like this. Learn to relax, get to bed on time, and do your exercise. Breathe fresh air when the sun's out there, and eat like this little rhyme. Fruits and vegetables, whole grains, white if you choose meat. Drink what you're mostly made of. Water makes your health complete.
Nice. I like that. All right, we're all going to have to memorize that and sing it back later, so I think that's awesome. Now, you kind of alluded to this before, but with the intense marketing that goes on with prescription drugs today, it can be really difficult to know what to believe. So your book mentions that you embrace that naturopathic approach to getting and staying healthy. How does that really compare to a more traditional medical approach?
Well, I guess I kind of already answered that basically by saying I focus on the cause of the problem and really preventing the cause, because preventative is really where it's at. And we can almost do everything. I know this is a big statement, but I've been doing this 40 years, a long time. It's not my first rodeo. So we can do almost everything with natural alternatives that we can do with pharmaceuticals, which is surprising to a lot of people. I mean, we get this idea that, we've got the best health care in the world, and we do, and yet our first go-to is often a pharmaceutical instead of the natural alternatives. And I'm not saying that, for example, your genetics don't make a difference. They make a big difference. But something we've learned in science is this, that's had a profound impact on me. Genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. So even if you have the genetics for some negative things or positive things in that matter, these genes aren't necessarily going to be expressed. So it's the expression of genes that's going to make the difference. And a lot of things affect gene expression that you might not think of. For example, learn to relax, get to bed on time, and do your exercise, breathe fresh air when the sun's out there. All of those things have an effect on genetic expression. So I guess my conclusion is there's something you can do about your situation, natural things that you can do that can reverse sickness and disease, certainly prevent sickness and disease, and help you live longer and stronger.
I'm such a huge believer of that. I really live my life with this idea of two buckets. One is what I have control over, and the other is what I don't have control over. And certainly some of these things are easier than other things. But when we focus solely on the items that truly we have control over, and usually pray about the rest, because sometimes the stuff we don't have control over is pretty dramatic, but we really do have the ability to make a big difference with that. So you've embraced a new technology called phototherapy that many of us are likely to not be familiar with. So please talk about what it is and the simplified version of the science behind it.
Yes, about 3 years ago, I was introduced to this, and if someone told me it would have changed my life as much as it did, and I would have been able to help as many people that I have, I wouldn't have believed it. And I didn't believe it at first, but it's light therapy, and although it sounds a little, it's a new paradigm, and it is in a way, it's as old as the sunlight hitting your skin and making vitamin D. That's light therapy. This little patch, about the size of a quarter, you simply peel off the back, put it on your body. We're at 12 hours activation, then throw it away for 12 hours rest and restoration. What it does is takes your body's heat energy, your 98.6, which is infrared energy, and when it hits this patch media, it forms a very specific wavelength of light. Not like the whole spectrum of the sun, and the sun's a long ways away, but this is a very specific wavelength of light that triggers a molecule that's known to increase something called stem cells. And stem cells are cells that can become anything your body needs. If you need help in the cardiovascular area, it can become a heart muscle cell, an endothelial cell lining the blood vessel. And we have stem cell activity working all of our lives. But what most people don't know is by the time you're 35, you've lost 50% of your stem cell activity. By the time you're 65, you've lost 90% of that activity. So you're not, and I think some of us, if you're in my decade, I'm 68, that you're not healing quite as quickly as you used to, right? And part of that is that stem cell activity is not there. So that's what this patch is designed to do, and it's clinically studied. We've got over 80 clinicals that are real science, double-blind, placebo-controlled, independent, peer-reviewed, and a 20-year global patent. So the patches work. They're not on trial. The question is, are you going to wear them consistently? It takes about 3 to 6 weeks for people to notice something, but I could literally tell you about situations that would just be amazing that we've helped hundreds of people over the last few years just change their lives and change their health.
Great. And of course, Wendy DeYoung is one of our educational partners, and that the patches go by the name LifeWave. So definitely check those out if you want to know more. It's one of those things that I'm going to give them a try and see what, see if I have these wonderful results. This is an energy one, so I could always use more energy in my crazy life. So the focus of today's talk is really how we can embrace our gifts regardless of our age. So can you share some personal stories of how you've seen this with the people that you've worked with?
Well, I guess there's no more personal stories than myself and my wife, and we're both in pretty good health, but we started patching, and initially when I heard about this, I didn't believe it. I thought it sounded like a gimmick, and I said, Susan, I was born at night, but not last night. I'm not going to tell people to put a sticker on them and it'll heal them. But then when I looked at the studies, I saw the good science. And so I thought, all right, well, I'll check it out. And I started wearing them. It takes the average person 3 to 6 weeks to notice something. In about 5 weeks, I said, I don't really think they're doing anything to me, which is very common for a lot of people. And Susan said, well, you're not getting up 3 or 4 times at night, going to the restroom and waking me up. And because sometimes you don't miss things like that, but when you're my age, you gentlemen can relate to that. And that's something that's gone. That's been 3 years that I haven't had to do that. Amazing. But then I got some of my best results from months 9 to 12, where I've struggled with clinical depression for over 30 years, very consistently every year. And it took about 9 to 12 months, and I experienced a neurotransmitter balancing where I have not experienced in any way that depression. And that's been 3 years now, and that is a life changer for me. And then Susan had plantar fasciitis, which can be very aggravating, and had to wear a brace for it every night. For 10 years, she was wearing the brace. After just a couple months of wearing the patch, it was gone. And then a rotator cuff injury that she had in her shoulder where she couldn't go to the weightlifting classes she wanted to do. She was able to do that. And these are very, basic kind of simple things, but we've had some really profound things that have happened with people as well. It really is life-changing.
No, that's amazing. I love hearing things like that. And certainly you've already talked a little bit about the idea that you definitely practice what you preach. And what would you say has been the biggest contributors to you personally living your best life, both in the health realm and anything else that you'd like to add?
I'd say just learning that, I know you're going to speak about hope next, just to give hope. Susan and I did a TV show for 10 years called Hope for Your Health. Maybe some of you saw that. But to just give people hope that you can make a difference by your attitude, by your lifestyle, by what you put in your body. You are what you eat, right? No, you are what you ate. No, you are what you absorbed from what you ate. So make sure you're absorbing things right. So I guess just to give, just learning about these things. And it's a process for me. I learned them over 40 years, and I tried to put them in place, although Susan reminds me when I get off base that I should read my own books, and I should.
I love that. Thank you. All right, and I know that Dr. Don is actually speaking at a conference where?
In Utah.
Okay, so if he has to slip out before we're done, please don't take any offense to that.
Well,
So
I'm getting the signal from the
he's
back
getting the
there.
signal. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and just have you guys all give him a hand. All right, awesome. I'm so glad that they could fit that in. All right, we're going to move on to Virginia, and Virginia is the executive director of Young at Heart Enrichment Center. So, Virginia, your Young at Heart program certainly has helped many people find joy through both education and connection. So, can you talk a little bit about how the program got started and how it has grown over the years?
So our program is really a very grassroots organization. About 11 years ago, a group of us went on a mission trip to New Orleans. And when we were in New Orleans, we served a community that had programs similar to what we would have in Grand Rapids, Dégagé, some of the programs that serve the homeless. They provided technology classes. They had on site a senior housing complex that used to house a bunch of nuns or something. And then they had an apartment complex that housed a bunch of the priests in the New Orleans district. And so my story was not the senior program. I had a whole different experience of a gentleman that I worked with that was very touching and moving. However, when I came back from that mission trip, truly it was, I believe, divinely inspired. This is a very strong faith story for me. But I came home and my head within weeks was just filled with all these ideas of how we could use the parish center at the church I was attending for seniors. We already had a food and clothing pantry. We already had a tax program. We had so many outreach programs already. And over the years, I had heard many of those who have had many birthdays say, "What about us? What about us?" They served when they were parents. They served when they had grandchildren. And now they're at a point where they need to be served or want to be served. I don't know if it's always a need or a want, but it's just, hey, when does my time come when I can just sit, relax, and enjoy, and I don't have to be working at something? This notebook, I just started writing everything down in this notebook, and I brought it to some of the people I'd gone on this mission trip with. We had just built an elevator into the building. We had built a handicap access ramp. And I said, what do you think about doing this? This used to be a school. What if we turned it back into a school for the people who went to school here? was kind of the mindset. And we got a classroom here that we can do some music in, a classroom we can do this. So many people could not think of anything that was wrong with this idea, so we said, okay, let's go ahead. We got together some people, created a way to publicize it, and we reached out, and this is where it fits in with the Embracing Gifts. We reached out initially to the church community. Here's what we're thinking about doing. What do you guys think? And I was blown away. We had a gentleman who says, I love wood carving. I'd love to share wood carving. I am a Tai Chi instructor. Experience and help with others to learn because it had changed her life so much. We had a woman come forward and said, hey, I make cards professionally. I did not know there were professional card makers. She had images of cards she made in these catalogs and everything. I'd love to do some card making. So we just had these people coming forward, sewing. We had some people who are wonderful sewers. Hey, I'd like to sew, and I love sewing. I don't know what to do with all this stuff I sew. So, I'd like to do that with more people and figure it all out. So they came forward, and that's how we started our program, was with all the gifts that these people had. Others attended saying, I have no gifts, but boy, this sounds like fun. So they just started attending. We started making coffee. They helped us make coffee. And I started hearing stories such as, boy, I didn't know that when I retired I could have this much fun. Boy, I didn't know I could learn something new. And then not only did they learn something new, but the things that they learned, such as sewing, they then started giving that and giving back to the society, giving back. So just yesterday, we had, I think, probably our 10th baby shower. We usually do it around Mother's Day, and the last couple of years has been a spring tea. So these ladies come in, and they like to do the desserts and the tea, and we have a whole meal wrapped around it. And they bring in donations of things that they have sewn. It might be quilts, it might be burp cloths, it might be balls and teddy bears. So they started it, and now others also will contribute money, and then we can get at a reduced rate, because we're a nonprofit, tons of baby wipes and diapers and all that. So then we turn that around and give it to another nonprofit at a rate that they could not have gotten it for if they'd gone to Meijer. It's like, probably 1/4 the cost of what they would pay at Meijer for these products. So we'll do that again in Father's Day. Then we do beer, burgers, and brats around Father's Day. People bring in donations, and we then pass along those donations to an organization that helps single dads. The organization we helped yesterday is called Light. They provide care for teens who choose to keep their baby. They provide financing and help give them a safe home if their family of origin is not safe for them. So inherent in our program is the whole idea of embracing gifts. We all have gifts, and it's helpful to know that you're still valuable and important to the community, and that you can give back in whatever ways we do that. Now we also do things like euchre and bingo and just fun stuff. Again, it's all about building community. As we age and we start getting a little older, our friends and family also start passing along or having difficulty. So by building community, you have a ride when you need to go to the doctor's office. We send cards to the homebound. So we have a group that makes the cards, then we sign them, we send them to the homebound. So there's always that connection too, even when you're not able to come to the center for programming.
No, I think that's awesome, because so many people who have spent their lives volunteering and helping with others, it really can be challenging when you get to a point where you do need a little help to actually ask for that help, and especially if you haven't been readily connected with those people. But by seeing them, I know when I'm in connection with my friends, it makes it much easier to reach out and, hey, I need a ride somewhere, I need this or I need that. So that's great that you're building that. What are some of the most common challenges that you see in the people that you serve, and how is your program assessing some of those challenges?
If you ask a lot of organizations, they'll say isolation is one of the largest challenges that the people we serve are experiencing. And the isolation may be because their loved ones are passing and they don't know how to make new friends. They're not working any longer. They're not volunteering any longer. They don't have children who are pulling them into activities. Their children are grown and maybe moved away. Grandchildren might not live real close either. So they start becoming a little more isolated. I think the isolation also is becoming more difficult to get out, more difficult to move. My legs don't move as quickly. It takes me longer to get going in the morning. So the world moves faster as you age. I do think it truly is moving faster. Technology, everything comes at us so fast, and I think that contributes to isolation because we get overwhelmed by all of that. Phones, look at phones, how hard it is to learn. They're changing, updating them all the time. So I think there's lots of different things that can create the term isolation that kind of encompasses all into that. So I would say probably that would be the biggest challenge.
I would agree with that. And I think there's just a very pervasive difference in today's society with people, even simple activities like everyone wearing headphones and everyone being on their phones all the time, that creates just a different atmosphere where we almost feel shy about calling someone on the phone. Even in business, sometimes I feel like I have to apologize when I actually make a phone call and, I didn't want to text because I had more to tell you. And I think our society is missing that. I think we really need to come back to a time of connection, a time to speaking with each other, with everyone that we meet, whether it's the clerk in the grocery store or anybody that we meet on a day-to-day basis. So that's a very big deal. You talked a little bit about this, but your mission talks so much about giving back. And what are the best ways that you have seen for interested adults who would desire to jump in and serve, where they could get involved with what you do?
First of all, just if you have a gift that you want to share, feel free to come and say, hey, can I share this gift, and we'll find a space for you. We have other people who want to learn the gift. So sometimes, we take feedback, what do you want to learn? Do you want a yoga class? Do you want to learn pottery? Some arts kind of activity, water painting. So we have brought some of that in based on people's interests and needs. Always learning a new thing stimulates the mind. It also gets you meeting new people. So that can, kind of as Dr. Don is saying, it stimulates your breathing, you're laughing, you're getting more oxygen, you're getting better blood flow. I remember during COVID, a comment that you made earlier, reminded me during COVID, how much I missed laughing. We didn't laugh. I started finding myself watching videos on YouTube. I was never a social media person. And I'm like, just to laugh, I started watching America's Got Talent episodes or something. That connection is so important. So whatever gets you in the door, it doesn't matter. Just start getting connected to people, and it'll help your health.
Absolutely. So for people especially who have, previously found purpose in building their career, or possibly raising their family, I do believe that it causes somewhat of an identity crisis when they retire or become empty nesters. So what would you say to somebody who might be struggling at that point in their life with finding renewed purpose beyond their kids and their career?
A passion. Finding a passion within you, pursuing a passion, just digging down deep to find something that brings you joy, that will bring you hope, that will bring you energy, that will bring you just a renewed purpose and renewed life. And I think you'll step back, kind of like Dr. Don was like, after a while, it's like, wow, you're going to do the same thing. After a while, you're going to go, wow, I'm getting up earlier, or I look forward to getting up, or I'm not thinking about my next meal. I remember some of our seniors saying, I thought when I retired, all I would do is go to restaurants and the casinos. They couldn't envision anything beyond that. And those are the two things I'm like, what? I can't wait to retire. I've got so many things I want to pursue. But we have to be careful because I put some of those things off thinking when I retire, forgetting, though, that when I retire, I might not have this much energy. So you need to figure out how to get yourself energized. And sometimes that's, taking that step and just baby steps at a time. And before you know it, you'll look back going, wow, this is awesome. This is fun.
So my daughter's mother-in-law was like a high-level person working for the IRS, a very, very corporate job for many, many years. And within the last year, her and her husband moved to Florida. She's now volunteering at like a big animal rescue and having a blast. I looked at that, I'm like, I want to do that. I want to like hold baby tigers and stuff like that. That sounds really cool. So just think, the options are endless. Virginia, do you have any favorite personal stories that have come out of your program?
One story I go back to right away when you asked that question is early on, one of the members that joined our group, she was born with cerebral palsy and pretty early in life developed a hearing impediment. And she would, people around her always felt uncomfortable. She walked funny, she kind of talked funny. She was very intelligent, highly intelligent, and she had worked professionally for years. But she had a passion for animals, and she always had a petition she wanted you to sign for the coyotes or the wolves or whatever, and so we just all shied away, like, I don't want to be on that petition. I've already been on them. Anyway, so she started coming, and she came from Cedar Springs, and she says, oh, I'm coming from Cedar Springs, this better be worth my time. And so she came down, and so we started making it worth her time. We're like, that's valuable, that's important, she's right. Cedar Springs, that's a long drive, gas money. And she had a passion for animals, so we started visiting animal sanctuaries, and we started doing things that were her passion. And all of a sudden, those around became softened to her, and she became softened. She was no longer hitting us with these petitions. She was less offensive. Everyone else just made more room for her, and she died shortly, a couple years into our program. And I'm telling you, on one end, it was heartbreaking. On the other end, I just had tears. I've never spoke at a funeral. I spoke at the funeral, and I spoke about the influence that she had on our program, on the people, and vice versa. If it had not been for our program, there would have been 3 people at our funeral. Our program outweighed that church with our people over here and her 3 family people. And it was that. Her family came up and said, thank you so much for making her last 2 years so joyful. And that really is a big story that I keep in the back of my head. We never know when we're going to pass, and we all want to pass with those last years being fun and joyful and hopeful and giving back and meaningful.
No, I think that's a wonderful story, and I think that's such a great example of when you can get people together for any common goal and get to know one another and have the ability to start focusing on the good things about a person and not the bad things about the person. Because, of course, all of us are a mix of good and annoying, and God knows, my husband back there, I thank him every day for putting up with me for almost 30 years now. But that's the thing, you find your people. And you start appreciating the things that are good within any person, which is wonderful. And I just want to say, for all of you that travel on a monthly basis to come to these presentations, that means the world to me, because that tells me that this is worth it. And I just really applaud all of you who take the time, and especially those of you who come from a ways away. And I know there's quite a few of you that do. So, Virginia, finally, what is the easiest way that our attendees can get involved in Young at Heart, and also anything else that you'd like to share with them?
Currently, we are meeting in the Creston neighborhood. we're using a church facility. We are not church affiliated, but we use the church who donates the space to us. It's called Second Church. It used to be Second Congregational Cheshire. And we offer classes right now on Mondays and Wednesdays. We will probably in the future grow. Right now, Mondays and Wednesdays, but we pack a lot in on those Mondays and Wednesdays. We have an exercise class that's led by a personal trainer. We have Tai Chi classes. We have a yoga class that just started this month. So those are kind of the exercise classes that we are offering. We offer things such as wood carving, euchre, card making. We do bingo. We do team trivia. And then we also offer presentations, such as some of the people that you saw out in the lobby would come and do a presentation so you can get to know a little more of what they have to offer. We just did a wellness event just earlier this month where we had a couple people from Ivy Rehab come in and did a presentation on how to walk and how to carry your body in a way that doesn't create further problems for you. We had massage students come in and offer massages, and we had a woman come in who does alternative healing, talk about alternative healing, and we'll do an outing to her place. We also do outings. We are also doing a speaker series this spring. The first one will be May 28th. The woman's Sherry Burton, who will be talking about the orphan train, the historical event, U.S. history of using orphan trains in World War II and post-World War II to send children mostly to the West and Midwest where they could be with homes, and that sometimes it was positive, sometimes it wasn't, but it's a historical event. And then we have another woman coming in June and another woman coming in July talking about the lighthouse, the women light keepers. So we do speaker series. In the fall, we'll do a series on the war, Vietnam War, Korean War, and World War II from the perspectives of people who served as well as the people who loved the ones who served. So we do speakers engagement. So the best way really is to come. We do have information out there. You're welcome to come and participate. Like I said, you're welcome to just volunteer, even if you want to help make coffee. Just kind of help us serve lunch. We do lunch pretty much every Monday and Wednesday. We can use you in almost any way that you're willing to come and serve and get to know each other.
Awesome. Will you give Virginia a round of applause? Thank you. I think that's so great to just be bringing all these people together and just have it be building from here, just building community. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to Mark Bennink, and he is the spiritual care advisor and a chaplain for Hospice of Michigan. So Mark, thanks for being here. During the course of our busy lives, it can really be easy to take for granted that our health or the health of a loved one can change on a dime. So how do you begin to minister to people who are facing a terminal diagnosis or especially who have lost a loved one unexpectedly?
Well, Laura, as a hospice chaplain and a spiritual care advisor, I have been trained to really minister to people where they're at, whether they're dealing with a terminal diagnosis or if they've lost a loved one. And as a hospice chaplain trained in clinical pastoral care, one of the things I regularly do is just check on people where they're at in my visits, asking them, questions about how they're feeling, practicing active listening, just really trying to be there for that person. One thing I always say is a superpower of a chaplain is just being there, having that presence with that person, with that family member. And in terms of my own role, I see myself as bringing God's loving presence to whoever I'm talking to, whoever I'm visiting with. And that ministry of presence could involve asking questions, could be reading a scripture verse, sharing a prayer with someone, but it can also just involve sitting with a person. I have patients that are not able to converse, so sometimes I'm just sitting there playing music for them, just being a calm presence there with them. Or it may mean just doing a lot of active empathic listening for a person that maybe is going through a real struggle at the time.
No, I like that idea of simply ministering by doing nothing else but being there and listening. And I find that, our lives are busy and crazy, and sometimes it can be challenging to simply stop and visit someone, stop and listen to somebody who maybe has a life that is not filled with work and activities and so forth. So that's a really, really important thing. You were previously a minister full-time, so what were some of the experiences that led you to want to work in hospice?
Yeah, I was honored to serve as pastor of 4 churches, 1 in Iowa, 3 in West Michigan. And then I did that for almost 24 years, and then I've been a hospice chaplain now for almost 4 years as of this coming July. Found throughout my working with different churches that I often was working with older people. I happened to have a lot of older populations in my churches, and I have to confess, sometimes I wondered, Lord, love to see some younger folks, but that was my ministry, so did a lot of visiting with them. But I also ended up doing a lot of grief ministry, a lot of funerals, a lot of people losing loved ones, and that really was the case in my 3rd church in Jenison, where over the course of 10 years, I ended up doing funerals for 91 people. Wow. A lot of people passing away, and that really affected the church, but was really a training ground for me in terms of grief ministry, and just helping people through that. And then after that church ended up closing, and then after that, I had a time of discernment, figuring out what God wanted me to do next, and I thought, you know what? I want to see what this chaplaincy thing is all about. So I ended up signing up for that, and I did a clinical pastoral education unit at Pine Rest Christian Hospital, worked for a couple units there for 3 months, and had a great experience with that. And then I did go back into an interim pastorate for a little while, but ultimately, towards the end of the interim pastorate, found out that the longtime chaplain for the Grand Rapids team of Hospice of Michigan was retiring, moving on to better things and other things, and I was able to sign up and be hired for that position, and I've really found it's been affirming of my gifts. It's really my sweet spot now when it comes to what God has given me to do in terms of grief ministry and just being there for people and being an encouraging presence.
Awesome. So there are often misconceptions that bringing in hospice is like giving up hope, but what would you say to somebody who feels that way?
I would just remind them that the goal of hospice is to provide the best quality of care for you at this stage of your life in terms of physical, emotional, and spiritual comfort. As a patient comes to the end of curative treatments for cancer or other diseases, we often find that the cure is worse than the disease. And we find that the quality of life goes down, and so what we seek to do is to provide that comfort care, and we've often found with certain people that quality of life actually improves to the point they feel better and able to do some of those things that they have been wanting to do. I've known many hospice patients who actually were relieved to be done with those curative measures so they could have this comfort care and then have a little different focus. And our hospice and others have helped to make lifelong dreams come true for people. We had a PEDS patient who was a huge Michigan football fan. He actually was in the news with Wood TV and other networks. He wanted to be on the Michigan football team. He had terminal cancer as a senior in high school, and he ended up being able to go and do a practice with the football team with our help and with the help of at the time the football coach there, Coach Harbaugh, and that was a great thing. Also helped another patient finish writing a book. She was writing a mystery novel, and we had a volunteer come and help her finish that book she was working on. And we've had PEDS patients too that have wanted to go to Disney on Ice, and we've helped do those sorts of things for patients as well. So really trying to give them the best quality of life at that end stage.
So I follow an author named David Soley, and he talks about the 5 predictable dilemmas that are commonly faced as people age. And the 5th dilemma involves, how do I say goodbye? So, and this has really shown that this is a stage that all of us go through to some degree. So how do you encourage families and individuals to truly embrace their lives while simultaneously preparing for a time when they will have to say goodbye?
Well, we in hospice care encourage our patients to make the most of each day as they're able to do that. Our doctors and nurses, of course, provide medical care for our patients. Social workers provide emotional support for our patients. Our healthcare aides provide the daily cares for them. Our volunteers provide wonderful companionship. And our music therapists provide music to manage symptoms and bring joy and the power of music to our patients. And of course, as chaplain, blessed to provide that spiritual care, which they can enjoy. From our first visit with our patients and families, we encourage them not only to take advantage of the hospice resources, but also to make sure that their final arrangements are in place. We talk about that right at the beginning, just to ask about that, make sure that they've got that set up. And we also encourage our patients and families to strengthen their relationships together. Have those visits. Come on over. Try to keep those ties going and strengthening. And we also provide memory-making tools as ways for these family members to remember their loved ones. We do handprints. We do heartbeat special mementos for children and for adults. We make bears and blankets, memory bears and blankets out of maybe a special pillow, or just did one for a man that was a worker in a business. They wanted his shirt made into a memento, so we made a pillow for that so they could always remember Grandpa. And then we also have volunteers that do life stories that help patients to share their life and record those for the legacy for future generations to remember. Then we also have a grief support team, and they provide not only grief support for after a loved one dies for 13 months, but we also do that for anticipatory grief for families that maybe are anticipating, the grieving to come and want to help them to get ready for that.
No, that's certainly a lot of great resources. So West Michigan is made up of people from multiple faiths and ethnic groups. How do you tailor your approach so that you can respect and support people of all belief systems?
When a patient is first admitted to hospice care, the admitting nurse gets background information, including the faith background, the spiritual background of the patient, and passes that word on to the team. And when I come on for a first visit, I learn more about that patient's background, family, and work, but also their spiritual background. And they do have an opportunity at the beginning of our process, of our visits, to say, yes, I'd like spiritual care, or no. So we always try to honor that decision at the front. But with each patient, I always try to tailor my plan of care for where they're coming from, with their faith background, what they want. I've had atheist patients. You may think that's really funny, but I have. And they may just want to have a guy that talks to them or listens to their stories. I had a guy that told me every time, I really have a hard time with religion. Just want you to know that, Chaplain. Then he would talk to me for an hour about his life. So, so that may be something I do. Could have a Catholic patient that wants to have the sacraments brought, so I can contact a parish priest and have them come to bring the Eucharist or sacrament of the sick. May have a Protestant patient that wants scripture reading and prayer, and I can certainly do that. I've had Jewish patients. They may want to have a favorite psalm read when I visit. Black patient may want some gospel songs shared with them, and I can do that and sing along with them. I've had a number of Hispanic patients, Spanish-speaking patients, and I've ministered to them with an interpreter and maybe sharing a Spanish audio scripture with them as I visit them each time to meet them where they're at. But we always seek to tailor our visits and our ministry to what they want me to have done. I have had to deal with the question of, I really want my dad to be saved. Could you please preach to him and make sure that he, gets to the right place? And I have to say, well, if they want that, sure. But we always want to make sure that we're doing what they want done. And if the patient wants to have that sort of message given to them, I can do that, but I have to honor the patient's wishes first of all.
Yes, very, very important to have the patient first for sure. So we have a dear friend whose mother actually graduated from hospice multiple times before her final decline and passing. So can you tell us about anybody that you've worked with that have had the same experience and was really able to truly embrace their life while also being served by hospice?
I'll share a couple different stories. Had one example of a middle-aged man who loved fishing. He had terminal cancer, and he was living with his family and just really wanted to have that opportunity to go out in Lake Michigan again and, catch some Lake Michigan salmon and bass and so forth. And so we made that arrangement. We talked to a charter fishing service and was able to get him out on the lake, and he was able to catch some nice big fish, and he had a wonderful day doing that. So that's one example, fulfilling his dream of getting back out there in the water. Had another example of a 90-year-old lady, also had terminal cancer at the end of her life, and she wanted to make a farewell tour of her family. She had loved ones that lived in some southern states and wanted to go down there and see them one last time, so we made sure that happened. Her son, who happens to work on our team, went with her. It was his mother, and he accompanied her, but our social worker made sure in each state that she was in that she had adequate hospice care available in case something happened. And then she went around. She was able to go to a granddaughter's wedding and able to just enjoy being with her family. She was gone, I think, a couple of weeks, and then she came back, and as the Lord would have it, she ended up passing away just a short time after she got back, but it was a wonderful trip and something that was just so meaningful to her, so we were honored to give her that opportunity.
That's great. That sounds like a pretty good way to round out the last days of a life. So Mark, what final thoughts would you really like to leave our audience in regard to, living life every day while they are still healthy?
Well, I would encourage all of you to do what I tell my hospice patients to do, and that is to make the most of each day. Live your life fully as much as you can right now. Seek to strengthen your relationships with those you love. If you're dealing with an estranged relationship, do all you can, if possible, to try to bridge that gap, to build those connections again if you can. If you have particular hopes and dreams, seek to make them come true. Maybe some of you have already written your bucket list, or maybe you're working your way through it. I would encourage you to keep working on that. Make those dreams a reality now as much as you can. And then just in terms of your life, I think it's so vital that instead of focusing on the negative, which we all can do, let's focus on the positive. Look at the blessings that you have each day. I've got a patient right now, and she says, so many people are so gloomy around me, but I want to look at the good things in life. I want to see the blessings that are there every day for me. And she does that, and it's wonderful. She's one of my favorite patients to visit, by the way. But just to make this a little more personal, my sister-in-law was diagnosed 8 years ago with stage 4 lung cancer. And just this past week, she was put on hospice care at the age of 47. Because of her treatments and the grace of God, she has been able to live a full life. She started a wedding ministry, helping couples to have the equipment and the dresses and the other decorations they need for their special event. She's engaged in her 3 daughters' lives. Of course, she did that her whole life, and their whole lives, but especially now. Celebrating their milestones, making memories with my brother and their family, and able to participate in those milestones. Last spring, their oldest daughter got married, and she was able to be a part of that. And then just this past weekend, we had an open house for their second daughter who graduated from Michigan State, and able to celebrate that. And and also my future daughter-in-law had a wedding shower, and she helped plan that, and had a wonderful time. And just really trying to do all she can to live that full life with the time that God has given her. And I'll just close with a word of wisdom from the Apostle Paul. He says in the book of Ephesians, he says, "Be very careful then how you live, making the most of every opportunity." Thank you.
I love it. Thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to open it up to questions. Stephanie will run around the mic for anyone who has them, and before we get into our drawings.
You mentioned an author that you follow, David Soleil. How do you spell his name if I wanted to find some of his books at the library?
It is, I believe it's just Solie. Okay. And his book is, well, How to Talk to Seniors is the name of his book, and it's excellent.
As chaplain for West Michigan, do you work with all hospice agencies, all hospice companies? And what's the longest length of time you've had a hospice patient?
And we certainly work in conjunction with other hospices. Hospice of Michigan happens to be the largest nonprofit hospice in the state of Michigan. We have teams all across the Lower Peninsula, and one key way that we work with other hospices is we have 24/7 phone care, and we have after-hours nurses. We have basically it's a caregiver support center, and that support center not only helps our hospice, but we actually serve other hospices across the state, and I think even across the country, in terms of helping people to get their needs met with whatever hospice they happen to be working with. So that's a tangible way that we provide support for other hospice work, because we're all in this together, really.
And the second part of the question was, how many? I can't talk.
Yes, that's
how
right.
How long was your most?
Yeah, how long? And that totally that's dependent, of course. But our patients come on having a 6-month expectation of life. But depending on the situation, we've had patients that have been on for years. As you heard from Laura, I mean, some people graduate. We don't give them a diploma, but we do. We welcome them back, exactly. So we've had people that have graduated and come back. We've had patients for years. I've had patients that have been on most of the time I've been serving as a hospice chaplain, and it just really varies. And if they continue to meet criteria, we keep them on.
I think one of the most important things to remember that as long as you meet that criteria for hospice, it's simply there to support you and enhance your life. And at a point where you do get healthy and no longer hit that criteria, then you go off it and then come back to it. So it's a positive thing and not meant to ever be this idea of a giving up of hope. So,
what different ways can you volunteer for hospice of Michigan?
Oh, we love volunteers. Stephanie and I used to work together at Hospice of Michigan. I'll just point that out. She was our marketing advisor. But in terms of volunteers, we have companionship volunteers, someone that may want to just sit with a patient or keep company with them, or read a book. Some patients like books read to them. If you love animals and you have a dog or a cat or a bird, haven't heard of any snakes, but we do have pet volunteers that come to visit patients and give them encouragement in that way. We have volunteers that have musical gifts, that have sang and have played instruments as well for patients. So we can use them in all kinds of ways. We have fundraising events. We're always needing volunteers to help with that. So, certainly that's another way you can sign up and be involved.
When we were looking for hospice care for my mom, she had just turned 102, and we were surprised to learn it wasn't enough to be old. And if you could just speak to that, because we sat, fortunately I knew my my mother's recent medical history and everything, and was able to make a case for her.
Right.
But we sat talking for an hour, and he finally said, I think we have enough. But if you could just address that issue, why somebody who's 102 may not qualify.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to, as the medical staff look at that patient, they're looking for signs of decline, whether it's, they're eating less, or maybe they used to walk from, their bed to the bathroom, and now they're in bed all the time. They're not able to walk anymore. Or maybe their sleep pattern has changed. Maybe they've gone from, sleeping typical amount of time, 8 hours, but now they're sleeping 20 hours a day. So we're looking at all those sorts of signs of declines and really looking to see, that they have about a 6-month prognosis. Those are some of the general things that we look at.
Hi. How do you counsel family members on accepting end of life of a loved one? Because that's part of hospice, right?
Right. Yeah, certainly any of our, certainly myself and the nurse, the social worker, and the medical doctor, we're all working, with the family to help work through that. And certainly we become aware of family dynamics and other concerns that the family has. And we just simply try to meet them where they're at and hear their concerns or hear their questions. We're always very open to, where the family's at, and maybe they're struggling with, should my loved one be on hospice? We're not sure, and sometimes it's a matter of saying, well, let's see how this goes, and just be aware if you don't feel it's the right kind of treatment for your loved one, you can revoke, you can go off it and do some curative paths of treatment if you so choose. But just being a listening ear and really trying to meet those concerns, and we do have counselors too that can help if with grief counselors and so forth. So we just really try to work with our families in a proactive way and try to meet them where they're at with their concerns.
Long time no see, Virginia. Question for both of you. So often in our society, money drives the train. How is insurance affecting the hospice story, and then in your career as a social worker, how has it changed over your experience? Or is that too long a story?
No, that's fine. Thank you for the question. As I mentioned, Hospice of Michigan is a nonprofit, but we do get funded by Medicare and Medicaid. And one of the things I'm very proud of with our hospice, our motto is every person, every time, and we take people, if they have private insurance or if they have Medicare, Medicaid, but we also will take people that don't have insurance. We will, seek to help them as well. And obviously, that depends a lot on Medicare and Medicaid funding. I mean, obviously, as we know from our current national situation, that could be changing, so that could affect us. And certainly we do these fundraisers a few times a year. We happen right now to be doing a Barley Barbecue and Beets fundraiser in different parts of Michigan, including Grand Rapids. And that's always been a successful fundraiser for us. But just really trying to raise those funds and meet the patients, whatever their financial ability happens to be.
I think Teresa's question, Teresa knows that I am a private practice therapist working with primarily domestic violence and sexual abuse, but also other forms of anxiety and depression. So Teresa's asking from that end, but so I can answer that briefly, because that's not really what I'm here for. But I'll also let you know, though, insurances, from our experience, does seem to be becoming more invested maybe in wellness programs. And so when I talked about our exercise class, insurance, if you have the One Pass or Silver Sneakers on your insurance, that will pay for your participation in our exercise class. So right now it does not cover the Tai Chi or the yoga class, but we are seeing an increase in that, the willingness of insurance companies to help provide funding for wellness programming. In my private practice venue, I have just seen insurance companies becoming stricter on documentation of what you're there for, the criteria. When they come in for an audit, they have very specific criteria that you need to meet or that needs to be documented. But at the same point, because I've been in that practice for a good 30 plus years, Medicare, Medicaid used to limit the number of sessions you could go for therapy and social work, and after a couple of sessions you had to keep trying to get more and get more. Medicare, Medicaid no longer does that. They don't micromanage. I don't have to every 6 sessions ask for a continuation. So they've actually, in my mind, kind of gotten their hands off and said, we'll trust the providers and client-centered. If the client needs it and it's helping them, then that's good enough for us.
Virginia, I'm just wondering about the cost of your events. So like the card-making class or any of those kinds of activities. Is there a cost for those kinds of things?
Yeah, great question. So the exercise class, yoga class, and the Tai Chi class, we do offer a suggested donation of $3. That is consistent with what Senior Neighbors offer. It's consistent with what One Pass and Silver Sneakers pays. So, but we don't turn anybody away. So if you cannot pay the $3, we really don't pay attention to who puts money in the basket. It's just a suggested donation for those classes. And the reason we request that for those classes specifically is because we want trained facilitators. We don't want someone sitting in front of a video and doing it on their own. So we do pay those particular facilitators a stipend to do those classes, and we require that they have insurance and certifications to teach those. And then lunches, we ask for a $6 donation for lunches. Pretty much everything else is free. Wood carving, card making, the cooking class, we do a monthly cooking class. Again, we ask for $6 to cover the food costs. But we don't ask you to pay for her time. Currently, we are funded solely by donations. For 8 years, when we were at our over the summer, we changed facilities and we changed fiduciaries. We were funded through the senior millage. Senior millage paid for 2/3 of our staff costs and paid for the staffing of the cooking class. When we changed venues, we became our own 501c3, and we are in the process of getting back on that millage. Fingers crossed. We'll find out in August, and that would start in October. But nothing else costs. Now, if we do a speaker series, like we're doing for June, July, August, we do charge a minimal cost for those. We do try to find sponsors to help pay for the speaker. And so the cost we keep minimal, the cost to help offset the cost of advertising and marketing and that kind of thing. We ask for reservations for events such as lunches or cooking class, presentations where space is a factor or how much food we need to prepare. But if you want to come for any one of the other events, you don't need reservations. It's helpful if you call. It's your first time you call, and we know to look for you, and we'll get you registered. But there's no registration fee or membership fee. You don't have to register for the just everyday classes that we have.
Okay, back there.
This is a question for Mark. My friend is an end-of-life doula. Do you work with end-of-life doulas?
Certainly have heard of them. I don't think we've worked with them directly. I think we'd be open to it. Yeah, it's certainly a valuable service that they provide. I can't think of opportunities where we have yet. Yeah, you're sitting by Stephanie. Maybe she knows something I don't about that. But
I just asked it. It's Laura from Grace and the Leaving. She's done stuff with hospice.
Okay.
So I know she does work alongside hospice. I don't think we ever had an opportunity with Hospice of Michigan to use her yet, but she does work hand in hand with Hospice very simply.
Yeah. In this audience, who has heard of the term end-of-life doula? Okay, so about half of you. That is really becoming a more and more common service that you can actually hire somebody that really would augment the services of a hospice. And it's this idea of non-medical assistance as someone is preparing to die. Being with them, helping their family, supporting them, kind of being the hands and feet of whatever that family might need. And most of the time, as I understand it, those services are all private pay at this time. But if it allows the family time to be a family, that can absolutely be a very, very worthy investment. So, okay, we've got time for one more question. I know there was somebody else in the back.
Can you say something about how palliative care interfaces kind of with the hospice care system?
Be very happy to do that. I've had that same question asked of me multiple times. The way I would explain it is palliative care is kind of the umbrella term. Palliative care is any care that you get medically that's for a chronic condition. It could be for diabetes, it could be for pain management, any condition you're dealing with that's a chronic condition that you can't be cured of. And really, hospice care, I would explain, falls under palliative care. It's really a type of palliative care that focuses specifically on care for end-of-life patients, those that have been given that terminal diagnosis of 6 months or less. So palliative care is kind of the overall broad term, and then hospice care falls under that type of care.
Okay, well, that's going to conclude the question part of it. I've just got a number of announcements before we adjourn for today. So believe it or not, we are at the final stages and we're down to one more presentation for this season. Can you believe it? So our last presentation is going to be on June 17th. Here we're going to talk, it's called Digital Savvy, and we're going to talk about various aspects of surviving and thriving in a consistently more and more online world. So we're going to look at education and safety and just kind of how to do your day-to-day things on that. So I think it's going to be a great presentation, and you can sign up certainly right here.